But I really want to thank everybody and recognize, all those on this platform listening to this presentation, and really happy that I'm given this opportunity to talk about the subject. Let me just kind of share with the group what my background is here and what I'm actually doing now. As you all can see, I'm the clinical pharmacy manager in a teaching hospital here. It's a level 1 trauma center. So I manage the clinical pharmacy program under working very closely with the director of pharmacy, who I guess in Nigeria you would call that individual head of the department. I also have certain titles associated with pharmacy schools. And I have 2 of my pharmacy students here. Again, this is part of what clinical pharmacists do, and that's why I really wanted them to be here. And I think they wave to you guys, Victoria and Chinisa. So I have those titles with the pharmacy school. And I think it's important that I share this, because as I start sharing what is actually happening here in US, and as it pertains to what's going to happen, what I'm thinking will happen with the consultant pharmacists, Cadre in Nigeria, I think it'll be clear where I'm coming from. So let's start. Let me see. How do I move this slide? Okay, yeah. Wait a minute. I think just give me a minute, let me. Okay. Okay. So let's start with what I'm going to be covering, and then I need to minimize this. Yeah, close that. Okay. First of all, I want to talk about some core concepts, and I think can everybody see my slides? Okay, can everybody see my slides?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, very good.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, first of all, I want to talk about the clinical pharmacy background a little bit. In talking about that, I'll be discussing different types of pharmacists, focusing on the competencies, the skills. Again, I'm going to be using US information, and I'm hoping that will kind of help us at the end of this presentation when we start talking about the way forward. How can we utilize some of this information to apply to Nigeria? But please, let's keep in mind that whatever we do has to work for Nigeria. Yeah, we can take information from different parts of the country or whatever, but we really need to have information that we have to have something that will work for our country. So I'll be assessing the education and training requirements of a clinical pharmacist. And I will break that down when I'm talking about clinical pharmacists. I will also talk about clinical pharmacist specialist. And then I will talk about the consultant pharmacist. Then you will see the differences. I will identify areas of specialties within the clinical pharmacy. Then I will try to talk about the roles and functions of a clinical pharmacist specialist, consultant pharmacist. Then mention some regulatory bodies here in US that really works with clinical pharmacists and the clinical pharmacy practice. Hopefully through all this, I'll be able to kind of share with you guys what I feel, at least from the review that I've done, appears to be the barriers, gaps of clinical pharmacy practice in Nigeria. And I would end by at least sharing what my strategic recommendations are to enhance the practice of clinical pharmacy. Next slide, I think I'm going to. Yeah. Now, it's always good to, what is actually, when you're talking about introduction with pharmacy practice, I think a quote that I like to start with is this: pharmacists are dedicated to the preservation and advancement of public health. Their efforts enhance the quality of your lives by helping us to live as free as possible from disease, pain, and suffering. And I think that's pretty much a good statement to make about pharmacists. We are part of the healthcare team. We play a very vital role when it comes to the multidisciplinary team with a focus on the pharmacotherapy, and really making sure that we're keeping the patient in the center when it comes to the care. So I thought we'll start with this. Next slide. And this is a quote from Pharmacist, Unsung Heroes, and it was in the document New York 2005. Next slide. Now, looking at the background of clinical pharmacy, it's a sector of pharmacy focused. Clinical pharmacy is a sector of pharmacy focused in the sciences and practice of rational medication use. It's a health science discipline in which pharmacists provide patient care. Again, you will hear me say a lot, patient-centered care that optimize medication therapy, promotes health, wellness, and disease prevention. These are all things we know. The field of pharmacy and the role of pharmacists, as we all know, has remarkably over the past few years continues to evolve. Previously, the focus was on distributive functions with an emphasis on drug compounding, medication delivery. Is that?
Hello?
Hello?
Can you continue, ma? Continue, ma, please.
Sure, okay. So now, okay, so, oh yeah, so I'm gonna go back. So it's talking about the evolving role of clinical pharmacists, how it started with the distributive and now we're focusing more. So now pharmacists are playing an integral role within all areas of the hospital, and not only just hospital, which is acute care, but we're beginning to also see it in the community pharmacist setting, in the ambulatory care setting. Pharmacists practicing as clinical pharmacists, doing all these clinical functions. The focus are like antimicrobial stewardship, nutrition support, anticoagulation, primary care setting, and so on and so forth. Next slide. Yeah, sorry. I think the next slide here you can see the areas when you're looking at the different, for clinical pharmacists. If you're looking at some of the patient-specific services that they give, this is something we do all the time: patient education, drug interaction screening, drug therapy monitoring, drug and disease management, pharmacogenetics, drug information, pharmacokinetic, collaborative practice agreements, whereby the pharmacist has a collaborative agreement with a physician in a particular area, whereby they can manage certain clinical functions under the auspices of the physician. Then when you look at—
Hello, ma.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello, ma.
Yes.
Hello. Sorry, please. We may need to pause. We are having challenges. So many people want to join, but they cannot join. Why? Dr. Bello, please, can you tell us?
Timmy, I'll send the YouTube link. We are already in a maximum link already now.
Wow, so many people want to join, they can't come in.
I've created the YouTube link. They can join through the YouTube links. I'll send to you the link.
So do you need to send it to me so I can send it to the platforms for them to join the YouTube link, because they are all—
Check your WhatsApp. I'll send to you already.
Did you send it to me?
Yes, check
all
your
right,
WhatsApp.
thank you. Sorry, ma. Sorry,
No
ma.
problem.
Dr. Pounds,
No,
please. Sorry, ma. Can you go ahead, please?
Yeah.
Sorry.
So just let me know
ahead.
what, yeah. So I'll go ahead. Okay, very good. No, I'm glad that this is of interest to a lot of people. So we just, and that's why we need to talk about this and see how we can, as a group, come up with recommendations to move forward. Now, when you're looking at facility-specific services, of course, the protocol, guideline, and policy development and review, typically your clinical specialist, who is a specialist in a particular field of clinical pharmacy, is viewed as an expert in that area when it comes to medication therapy management, can support the team, usually the physician, the nurses, the multidisciplinary team, to develop protocol and guidelines when it comes to that. Of course, we know with research, core measure and quality improvement initiatives, formulary management, and with adequate formulary management, that can lead to financial stewardship and, of course, medication safety. We'll talk more about that. And then you can see the global services whereby pharmacists, clinical pharmacists are also involved, and some of the ideas are listed there. Okay. So what is a definition for clinical pharmacists? You hear different terminologies being thrown out there. You hear clinical pharmacist, you hear clinical pharmacist specialist, and then you hear consultant pharmacist. So I will share with you the way this is here in US. A clinical pharmacist, it tells you, participates in the general practice. I think the best way to think of a clinical pharmacist is that this pharmacist is a generalist when it comes to clinical pharmacy functions. So in the specialized knowledge of scientific and clinical, and of course, they're involved in the use of medications and ensures optimal patient outcomes via comprehensive, evidence-based, individualized, and prospective drug therapy management. In a nutshell, a clinical pharmacist is a generalist. They have knowledge of pharmacokinetics, internal medicine, cardiology, so they have a general knowledge, but they are not a specialist in a particular field. Now, a clinical pharmacist specialist performs the same duties of a clinical pharmacist, but this person is a specialist in a particular field of clinical pharmacy. For example, there could be a specialist in cardiology. There could be a specialist in internal medicine. There could be a specialist in medication safety. There could be a specialist in oncology. There could be a specialist in psychiatry. There could be a specialist in nutrition support critical care. So they are a specialist in that particular field. And when we talk about the qualifications, I think you guys will understand that they have to do a general training to get that kind of background, at least here in the US. A consultant pharmacist. A consultant pharmacist is considered a medication therapy management expert, at least here in US, who provides advice on the use of medications, but their focus is more on older individuals, long-term care facilities. So will they be, and you all will see what their background is when we talk about this qualification. They could be a generalist who decides to practice in long-term care facility, I'm going to hold my thought on that. Then when we go to the, you guys will see more about what I'm talking about. Yeah. Now, these are just some of the competencies and skills. And this goes for all: clinical pharmacists, clinical specialists, and consultant pharmacists. There has to be standards of behavior. There has to be a focus on customer service. There has to be accountability. There has to be that awareness to change, to respond to what's happening in the environment. There has to be some knowledge of how to get drug information. Of course, patient education. Then there has to be something in place that shows the value. They need to have a system in place that will be able to show the value of what they do. And that is via documentation of clinical interventions, trying to see how that can be showcased so that other disciplines can really understand what pharmacists do. Pharmaceutical care, medication safety. Next slide. Now, this slide pretty much gives an idea, just kind of tries to summarize what we do here a little bit when it comes to education and training requirements. The prerequisite for somebody to get into pharmacy school here is typically they have to do 2 years minimum. Some get a first degree, all right? So once they get into pharmacy school, as you all know, PharmD is the way it is here. Majority of the programs is 4 years. Some programs are doing 3. In order to practice in the hospital, and even now in the community, ASHP, and I'm going to share with you guys what that means. ASHP is requiring that the pharmacist has to do a postgraduate year 1 residency program. So what they're saying is after that person graduates and that person is licensed as a pharmacist, they have to do 1 year of additional training. This training is focusing on the practical application. It's almost like it's almost like on-job training in all those clinical areas. After that 1 year of training, they will get a certificate of completion. That training is accredited by ASHP. That training at the completion qualifies them to practice as a generalist clinical pharmacist. Now, if they want to specialize, then they have to do an additional year. Let's say they want to specialize in cardiology. Then they will do additional year in cardiology, getting that as practical experience in cardiology. At the end, then that makes them a specialist, clinical pharmacist specialist in cardiology. So that individual will be the one that will be part of a team supporting the cardiologist, the physician who's a cardiologist, supporting the patients with cardiac problems. He will be focusing on the medication therapy management in that patient population. That individual is going to be the one who will write policies, who will write protocols, who will give presentations. If there's a residency program in that institution, that individual is the one who will be the preceptor, training other people to be. So that is the difference there. Now, I see you see the board certification. Board certification, you can do a pharmacotherapy board certification after your first year residency. That means you are board certified as a generalist. And then let's say you decided to do PGY2 in cardiology, you can also become board certified in cardiology. That's double board certification. So I just wanted, that's what this slide here is showing. Next slide. Now, continuing the education training requirements. So right here on this slide, I wanted to kind of give you guys a taste of the education and training requirements for the clinical pharmacist. When they're doing a residency, what the residency is looking at. The residency, you see where it says R1, requirement 1, 2, 3, and 4. For requirement 1, it says that has to focus on patient care. And it breaks it down into direct patient care and into patient care staffing. Then R2 is advancing practice and improving patient care. That could be medication use safety. Then they also have to be exposed to leadership and management, and it gives you what that is. And then R4 is a teaching, education, dissemination of knowledge, direct patient care. So this gives you an idea of the focus of the PGY1 residency program. R1, 2, 3, and 4. Again, and I hope we can have some discussion around this. You know, this is how most residency programs here in the US are designed, that the pharmacist who is in the PGY1 is exposed to this. Next slide. Now, for the specialists, I already kind of shared with you guys. They will go through the prerequisite. They will do their doctor of pharmacy. They will do the PGY1. And then they will do another year in the area they want to focus on. Next slide. Clinical pharmacy specialist, I think this is a completion of that. So it kind of gives you guys a purpose of a PGY2, what it's supposed to do. And I think I've kind of shared that next slide. I want to kind of show. So these are some of the areas of specialists, of specialties that a pharmacist can specialize in. Ambulatory care is a specialty area, cardiology, critical care, drug information, emergency medicine, geriatrics. So a consultant pharmacist can focus on that. Infectious disease, informatics is another way that is coming up, another area that is coming up. Internal medicine, health system pharmacy administration, medication safety, nuclear pharmacy, nutrition support. Nowadays, nutrition support is kind of combined with critical care, but nutrition support, every area is not a bad idea for all the specialists, like internal medicine specialists, to have an appreciation for nutrition support. Oncology is also another area, pediatrics, pharmacotherapy, psych, managed care pharmacy system. So these are the areas of specialties. Now, the BPS, in other words, areas that you can become board certified as a specialist are ambulatory care, cardiology, critical care, geriatrics, infectious disease, solid organ transplant, nutrition support. Like my background, I'm board certified. I'm a specialist in nutrition support, critical care. I'm also board certified nutrition support. You know, so these are the areas. Yeah, next slide. Yeah, so looking at consultant pharmacists, the way it's said here, these are some of the areas the consultant pharmacists can practice. As you all can see, they could be in senior care centers, in the prisons, in long-term care facilities. So their focus here in the US, that's where it is, you know. And when you look at their education requirement, they can be registered pharmacists or PharmD. They can be board certified geriatric pharmacists. They need to at least have a minimum of 2 years of clinical experience, or it could be any combination of education and experience. Next slide. I thought I should share this in preparation for what I'm suggesting as a way forward. This, I mentioned, you have heard me mention residency program. You have heard me mention residency program. That's traditional residency program. Traditional residency program is typically 1 year for the PGY1. As I mentioned, if they want to specialize in a particular field, they will do an additional 1 year. That'll be a total of 2 years. Non-traditional residency program, instead of 1 year, is 2 years. And who are the candidates for this non-traditional residency program? You remember I mentioned that clinical pharmacy is evolving. Years back, when we didn't have residency program in US, we had pharmacists who were working in the community pharmacy, who were working in the hospital, but who did not have residency, who through the years have gained knowledge and are, you know, very knowledgeable in their, but they didn't have the credentials. These are the ones who are candidates for non-traditional residency program, whereby you say, we like, for example, I'm going to be developing one in my institution, and I'm hoping by the grace of God, next year, I should have it going. It's going to be for those pharmacists within my pharmacy who have the credentials. I mean, who have the ability to do this. So they will go through the selection criteria. They will be interviewed. They will have that, once they accepted, they will go through the same residency program design as a traditional. But instead of doing it over 1 year, they're going to be doing it over 2 years. Now, they will continue to work in the pharmacy. In other words, nothing will change. Their salary will remain the same. And what we'll do is I will share them with the pharmacy. They will do 50% with pharmacy, and they will do 50% with me. I will work very closely with the operations manager. We will design the program. And at the end of the 2 years, they will get their certificate of completion. So those are the candidates. Those are the type of, so it's like you're recognizing people within the system already. And you have a way whereby you're helping them to get that credential that is needed for them to be there. So that's what this slide is already talking about. Okay, next slide. Yeah. So this kind of gives you an idea of what a typical non-traditional residency program program design could be. So you can see where it says the required learning experience. Of course, they will have orientation. They have acute care clinical practice. They will do some staffing, medication use evaluation, longitudinal. So it's the same thing as the traditional, but instead of 1 year, like I said, it's 2 years. All right, next slide. Roles and functions. So this slide shows the roles of the clinical pharmacist, the roles of the consultant pharmacist, and the roles of the clinical pharmacist specialist. So it's pretty much what I've gone through, and I hope, at least with some of this information I've shared, there's some kind of sensitization to what the different ones means and what their roles are. Next slide. You all heard me mention ASHP. So what is ASHP? What is BPS? And I think I purposely put this here because when it comes to way forward, we need to, I think it'd probably be a good idea to see, okay, the regulatory bodies that we have in Nigeria, which ones do we think can play a role to support this, and so on and so forth. So ASHP, you have the mission and you have the functions. So pretty much they help people achieve optimal health outcomes by advocating and supporting the professional practice of pharmacists in hospitals, health systems, ambulatory care, clinics, and other settings spanning the full spectrum of medication use. So if you ask me, this is probably synonymous with PCN. I don't know, I'm not an expert, but I just wanted to kind of put that in there. ASHP serves as serves its members as their collective voice on issues related to medication use and public health. So what do they do? What are the functions? They're involved in advocacy, career services, continuing education, drug information, meetings and conferences, professional policies, practice standards, publishing, and residency. And that's why I wanted to put this slide. Residency, training, accreditation. Residency and technician training accreditation. So those residency programs that I keep talking about, ASHP is the one that accredits. Now, so Board of Pharmacy Specialties, which is BPS, they are involved, their goal is to improve patient care by promoting the recognition and value of specialized training, knowledge, and skills in pharmacy, and specialty board certification for pharmacists. So what do? They provide specialty certification of pharmacists. Next slide. American Society of Consultant Pharmacists, ASCP. If you notice, their mission is promote healthy aging by empowering pharmacists with education, resources, and innovative opportunities. They develop members in collaborative practice, establishes business certification programs, coordinate rules, laws with DEA. So you all see where their focus is. There's another one that I decided to put here because to me, I think this is close to CPAN, ACCP, American College of Clinical Pharmacy. What is the mission? To improve human health by extending the frontiers of clinical pharmacy, extending the frontiers of clinical pharmacy. Functions, they provide leadership, professional development, advocacy, and resources that enable clinical pharmacists to achieve excellence in practice, research, and education. Promotes the generation of innovative science, development of successful practice models, and dissemination of new knowledge to advance pharmacotherapy and patient care. Next slide. So when you're looking at the standards of practice for clinical pharmacy, I think at this point, I hope it's getting clear, or at least becoming clearer to a lot of the listeners, that when you're talking about consultant pharmacists, at least the way I understand it in Nigeria, we're talking about clinical pharmacy advancement, pharmacy practice advancement. So that brings us to the standards of practice for clinical pharmacy. What are the qualifications? What is the process of care? What do we do, especially focusing on collaborative, team-based practice? Then that will lead to different things like professional development and maintenance of competence, professionalism, and then other responsibilities. Next slide. when you're looking at qualifications, at least here in US, of course, the pharmacist has to be a licensed pharmacist with specialized advanced education and training. They have to possess the clinical competencies. They have to acquire accredited residency training or equivalent, and being board certified. Next slide. Process of care. These are some key things one can look at when you're looking at process of care, assessing the patient, evaluating medication therapy, and then of course, with that knowledge base, you can develop and implement a plan of care, and then of course, follow up, evaluate, and monitor how the patient is doing with medication. All right, next slide. Documentation. The saying goes that if you don't document what you've done, it was not done. Documentation helps you to keep track of everything you've done, to analyze what you've done, to show the value of what you've done, not only to your own profession, but to other areas, So if we're trying to show the value to nurses, to medical doctors, in terms of what pharmacists do, we have to have documentation that shows the impact of our intervention on pharmacotherapy, patient safety, and pharmacoeconomic outcome. So that's how we show the value. Okay, next slide. I really want to talk about collaborative team-based practice and privileging. I really do feel that collaboration with key members of the healthcare team, the physician, the nurse, is the key to patient-centered care. So when you work with other healthcare professionals, when you're talking about collaboration, you're working with other healthcare professionals as a team. You have then the opportunity to provide high quality, coordinated, patient-centered care. Again, I keep saying that word. Patient-centered care. The patient is the center of everything we do. That's who we're trying to make a difference. We, the pharmacists, we're going to bring in our expertise on medication therapy management. The physician will bring in their expertise when it comes to the diagnosis and, and the care of the patient. Nurses play a role. So patient-centered care, and in some places, we have to create an engagement that allows the act to confer certain authorities, responsibilities, and accountabilities to the clinical pharmacist, like in my institution. I told you guys that I manage a clinical pharmacy program. All the pharmacists here in my institution are clinical pharmacists. I'm a specialist in nutrition support, critical care. I have a protocol that was approved years ago that was written by me, approved by our medical staff, that allows the clinical pharmacist to manage the drug therapy for patients who are on vancomycin and aminoglycosides. Also to manage patients who are on warfarin. Also to manage, when you see patients who are on intravenous medications and they meet criteria for PO to convert to oral, for the pharmacist to automatically do that. Also to manage patients on total parental nutrition. If a patient is malnourished and the physician puts the patient on parental nutrition, the pharmacist manages that parental nutrition formulation. They will write the TPN orders that will say how many grams of protein the patient will get, the electrolytes the patient will have, and on a daily basis, they will make electrolyte adjustment, manage. I think the point I'm making, you see, is something that I came up with, but because I'm part of that multidisciplinary team, I was able to get the blessing of the physicians, and it was approved through the proper protocol, and the clinical pharmacists are now doing it. So that's what creating an agreement that allows, and confers setting authorities, responsibilities, and all this that we do help contribute to the enhanced efficiency and effectiveness of a team-based care. So I think what I'm saying is that team-based approach, that collaborative team-based practice makes a difference. Next slide. This slide just kind of like summarizes some key points. I'm going to go to the next one. Next slide. So here it's talking about professional development and maintenance of competence. We've talked a little bit about the Board of Pharmacy Specialties. I mentioned to you guys that this is the BPS is the one that really helps with the board certification. We talked about, I think, consistent participation in continuing professional development activities is important. I think in Nigeria, we're doing an excellent job. I know I come to the PSN conference every year and I learn a lot, so we already have that. So maintenance of active licensure, including required continuing pharmacy education activities to the appropriate state board. I think PCN is doing a great job with that. So that's, so at least it's pretty much consistent with what we do here. Next slide. Professionalism and ethics. Well, again, as pharmacists, we maintain a, cordial relationship with our patients. We're committed to, in the best interest of individual patients and patient population within legal and ethical parameters. There are certain traits of professionalism we have to continue to exhibit: responsibility, commitment to excellence, respect of others, honesty and integrity, care and compassion. So this again are things that is consistent pretty much with with pharmacists. Yeah, next slide. Now, the other responsibilities of pharmacists that I would like to mention, clinical pharmacists, I think it's clear now that clinical pharmacists serve as direct patient care providers. And we're going to come back to this direct patient care, and that's where really being by the patient bedside, having that additional time whereby the pharmacist is exposed to really practicing that. I think that's very, very important. That's going to be key. And, you will need people like clinical preceptors, mentors to help develop pharmacists to be able to do this. And I think I'll mention that at the end when I'm talking about way forward. As the clinical pharmacy discipline grows, it must continue to familiarize more patients, families, caregivers, other healthcare professionals, whether they're payers or insurance, healthcare administrators, students, and trainees with the full range of clinical pharmacy responsibilities. Next slide. I think that kind of ends that part of, I wanted to share with you guys what's happening here in US. I did quite a bit of review with what I think is happening in Nigeria. I'm not an expert, but from what I can see, and this is something I got from one of the literature that I read, one the people who even, and it was striking to me. It says, in Nigeria, a shift from the traditional pharmacist role of dispensing and compounding of medications began in 1980s. With the introduction of drug information services and unit dose dispensing systems in some hospitals, which is true. More than 3 decades after this, clinical pharmacy practice is still evolving. And I have the person who wrote the article, yeah, it was in 2016, Asa and group. And I think that's true. But is clinical pharmacy practice evolving here in US? I would say yes. In fact, right now, pharmacy profession in US is still going through some changes. So it's the same thing that is happening in Nigeria. So it's still evolving. So that's the status of what I say. And I would like to hear what some of you have to say at some point, maybe even offline, to kind of see what you think. But that's the assessment. Next slide. What are some of the barriers to innovation or barriers to the movement of clinical pharmacy, at least from the way I can see it in Nigeria? And some of these are quoted here, and I broke them down. You have external barriers, you have structure of pharmacy practice, then you have the professional identity. I think from what I can see, I think our profession, pharmacy profession, is still underutilized. I think there's probably still some focus of custodians, of still the distribution. I couldn't get a clear understanding of what the clinical practitioners are actually, what they're doing, and we'll talk more about that. When you look at the structure of pharmacy practice, I think that's where I see more specialization of practice. Couldn't see that, the career pathway, and it looks like there's still some shortage of pharmacists. And it appears that we have underutilization of pharmacy technicians. It looks like we are utilizing them more here. And I think when you're looking at the external barriers, a big thing that I think we all need to continue to work on is going to be that need for collaborative practice. How do we get that going? So these are just some of the barriers that I've noted. Next slide. So what are the gaps, which will lead? I always look at, anytime I look at gaps, I look at opportunities for innovation, opportunities for next step. I think we need to look at our pharmacy education and curriculum, and be sure that it fully aligns to support education and training of clinical pharmacy practitioners. And I think what I'm trying to say there is that there's a need for clinical-based educational experience in the postgraduate education curriculum. Okay, US call it the residency. It could be called something else in Nigeria. But the point I'm making is that there has to be that experience, that opportunity that allows the pharmacist to have that additional time, and we can define what time, what it should be, whether it's 1 year or whatever, to be more exposed to the clinical application. I think when we look at the curriculum of pharmacy in Nigeria, I always say this, and I've said this to a lot of you. When you take the pharmacists who trained in Nigeria, and you take the pharmacists who trained in US, and you put them side by side, and you compare, the pharmacist who trained in Nigeria is going to beat the pharmacists who trained here in US, hands down, when it comes to didactic theory. There's no, hands down. Now, but when you look at the confidence of applying what they've learned, the application of whatever, of that knowledge, the comfort level of applying, that's where the pharmacists who trained here in US is somewhat on the upper hand compared to the pharmacists who trained in Nigeria. Why is that so? That is so because the pharmacist who trained here has had 1 year of exposure to interacting at the bedside with physicians, with nurses, with patients. Do we have the same opportunity in Nigeria? And so I think that's what I'm trying to say there. Need for clinical-based educational experience in postgraduate education, need for well-defined clinical roles, and patient-centered multidisciplinary care model. Those two things, I think, are the key. Now, we know we have shortage of experienced clinical pharmacists to provide teaching. In order to do this, we have to see who are the people who are going to help us move direction. I think I'll give you guys my ideas by the end. So there's need for that, and also need for leadership. The leaders have to buy into this concept, innovations, clinical development, and patient safety. Next slide. Now, I think this is where I can kind of tell you guys my little story. It says making progress. Where did I start? I started coming to Nigeria maybe 10 years ago. I was blessed to do that. Nigeria is my country. I came here, I have the education, and I thank God for that. Who should I give back to? I should give back to my country. I've given here, it's time for me to give back to my country. So I started, and I have to thank NAPSA. NAPSA was the organization that exposed me to what was happening in my country. And then that's when I realized there's a lot I can do. I can learn from Nigeria, I can learn from my colleagues there, and vice versa. So I will start with the most recent thing that was done. And I don't know if Dr. Amibo is on the line. I want to thank him. He, one of my past students, who is the HOD in Del Sud, I don't know if she's on the line, Dr. Magdalene, okay, had me to join them, whereby we had this pharmaceutical care group through the vision that Kingsley Amibo had, to say, hey, we need to look at what's happening in Nigeria. We need to come up with a consensus paper, have like a standardized practice. And there's so many people that I can't finish mentioning their names. The professor from Suka, Chinwokwe, you know, everybody. This is just an example of how Nigerians, how we get together and make something happen. So we just, and of course, Professor Para was actively involved. So a consensus paper was developed. So that's just this year. The other thing that I was blessed to have been part of, you all know, 2018, 2019, the Special PharmD Conversion Program in Uniben, PCN, definitely carried that. So it was PCN, Uniben, and of course, NAPSA with support. So that happened. So we're making progress. I did a lot of workshops that I did myself, that some of the NAPSA members, like Uche Defo, and there were some people that I brought from US, Dr. Pamela Moye and all that. So the point I'm making here is, this is the journey that was started. It has started, but we still have some work to do. I think I would like to mention that just recently I was appointed a member of the ASHP International Accreditation Commission. What would this do? What does it mean? What it means is that I'm going to be part of the group that will be overseeing the standards and review and recommend accreditation for programs for international pharmacy practice residency for international. So if it's in outside US, you know, so I think this is something, and I never applied for it. All of a sudden I just got a letter. So it sounds like this is the way God works. So if he decides that Nigeria wants to go that route, at least I'll be able to kind of help and support with that. Next slide. Now, so this brings me to my recommendations. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think we already see, when you're talking about the strategic plan, we have three areas we need to look at. One, the pharmacists. What should we do with the pharmacists? What should we do with pharmacy institutions? And what should we do with clinical pharmacy education? So these are three areas that I think we can focus. So next slide. I think the number one thing we need to do is define the role of the clinical pharmacist and scope of activities. Consultant pharmacy is synonymous with clinical pharmacists. The more I hear about what consultant pharmacists are, the more I'm saying it's synonymous with the clinical specialist. Because I've had consultant pharmacists for nephrology, for cardiology. So it's synonymous with clinical specialists. So we need to define the role of the clinical pharmacist and the scope of practice. And that's what this slide is, like a roadmap moving forward. We need to, once we define, we need to address looking at the credentialing process. We need to come up with a way to assess the people who are practicing clinically. What is that? What is the credential? Do we need to relook at what kind of credential they need to have. Do we need to look at additional, the training with a focus on the practical application, like I keep saying? Could we look at some of the things that US is doing with the non-traditional residency program, so that we can say, okay, let's look at those who are already practicing. Let's see what we can do with those who already have, quote unquote, the skills, you know. So I think what I'm trying to say here is that we can utilize resources from diaspora, or even look at resources within Nigeria, or combination, as preceptors, and we can create hands-on, clinical-based educational experience. I'm calling educational experience, US calls it residency, but we can call it whatever we want. But the point I'm trying to make there is that the first thing is, the consultant, in my mind, is a clinical specialist. We need to ensure that the clinical specialist has that knowledge, the credential. I mean, is comfortable with knowledge, credential to perform those duties, all right? I think in order to do all this, we can come up with a task force. The task force can come up with what the short-term and long-term plan is. To me, I think the short-term plan would be doing what I said, like looking at people who are already in the system and coming up with like a clinical-based educational experience. We can look at collaborative practice agreements. And I think it's on the next slide. Go to the next slide. So if you're looking at defining the role of the clinical pharmacist and the scope of activities, and that's where I kind of talked about that. We need to define the scope of the pharmacist's activities within each position. We have to identify their skills, their role requirements, expectations of each. We have to have a clear vision of the pharmacy services at the practice side. We have to assess the appropriateness of the clinical program. And then we need to have mentors. And the mentors can be, like I said, using people here in US, collaborating with people who have come here, or people who are here, or people in Nigeria. Yeah, next slide. Here. We have to have a task force, and I think it's on the next slide. Yes, okay. This is where I really wanted to discuss a little bit more. Yeah. A task force has to be created. And members of the task force, some of the people that I'm suggesting will be PCN, PSN, CPAM, WAPCP. This task force then need to discuss logistics. First of all, the task force need to do an assessment. Some of these points that I've made, they need to validate it. Is that something that is actually happening? Then they need to discuss logistics of having this experience that I'm talking about. Logistics will include funding and what they want to call it. I'm calling it a non-traditional residency program. And then they can also identify other non-pharmacy regulatory bodies that will accredit this program. Because at the end of the program, there needs to be a certificate of completion, and it has to be, accredited. They need to discuss the duration of the program. Like we here in US, we do 2 years. They will always have to look at what it should be. Then they have to determine selection criteria for the eligible participants. Suggestions for eligible could be those who have completed the Doctor of Pharmacy degree, or those, either the non-traditional that was done in UNIBEN or whatever, or in addition to maybe individuals that are pharmacy practitioners with 5 years of work experience in acute care setting or community setting. When it comes to individuals that will train these people, They can look at collaboration with diaspora, or they can look at people in Nigeria. So, because there has to be preceptors. Next slide. So it goes back again to, and then once you do the non-traditional, you can then start creating your own preceptors to eventually lead to the long-term plan, which is the traditional residency program. Next slide. I cannot really stress enough the value of a multidisciplinary team. Everything that I've said, I don't think would work if we do not have a multidisciplinary team. So there has to be something in place to promote culture change, to really promote the value of multidisciplinary teams. Physicians have to work with pharmacists and nurses. We pharmacists have to continue to show our value when it comes to medication therapy management. And ways we can show our value is going to be giving physicians opportunity to see what we're all about when it comes to medication therapy management, gaining their confidence, and vice versa. All right. So next slide. I think the take-home message, yes, next slide. Yeah, next slide. The take-home, this probably can be like a good summary or take-home message. I think in this slide, you can see what our challenges are when it comes to Nigeria. And then you can see what the future is for each area. One talks about the national policy and legislation to guide clinical pharmacy practice. It kind of gives you details of what it should be. Then it talks about need of recognition from other cadres as direct patient care providers. Then you have the job specification, job description for clinical pharmacists. So it keeps going back to the point I made. We have to first of all decide what is the function of what we call the consultant pharmacist. From what I can see, the consultant pharmacist at least is synonymous to what is in US, the clinical pharmacist specialist. Then we have to figure out a way to integrate this pharmacist into the multidisciplinary care teams, be respected, and then, and I think these are and then we need to look at the other major point here that it says is that insufficient exposure to experiential opportunities. I think that's what I've been saying, meaning the practical application of what we learn. And the fact that we have limited number of trained clinical pharmacy preceptors. And that was the point I was making. Okay, can we have a short-term plan whereby the people who meet certain criteria, we bring them up to speed, get them into the system, then they will be the one that can help in terms of the future. And it says right here, we have to have longitudinal exposure to experiential opportunities in clinical pharmacy. Practice sites, we should have practice sites that have trained clinical pharmacy preceptors. And then the last one, when you're looking at the educational curriculum, is talking about the traditional B-Pharm, the PharmD. This is also where I need to say, without application of our clinical knowledge, without us being part of the multidisciplinary team and working closely with our doctors and nurses, I'm not really sure what good our PharmD will do us. Next slide. So the expected outcomes, if all this is done, what do we expect to see? Of course, improved patient-centered care and health outcomes. Enhancement in educational foundation. Again, I keep saying residency program, but we can call it something else. Increased collaboration with other healthcare professionals. Build better relationships and trust with other healthcare professionals. This will create more job opportunities. This will give us more job satisfaction because we can have certification and recognition from whoever our regulatory bodies will be. We can also see increased collaboration with academia and the healthcare institutions, and of course, development of preceptorship in residency program. Next slide. So in conclusion, what are the key takeaways here? I think I will end by saying we're working together to deliver comprehensive patient-centered care involves the following: to have the ideal multidisciplinary care team made up of physicians, nurses, pharmacists, dietitians, and other healthcare professionals. And the primary goal would be to provide high quality patient care. And I would then say, implementing postgraduate hands-on clinical-based educational experience and preceptorship across Nigeria through a variety of delivery methods can help with efforts to enhance this patient-centered care, advance the pharmacy practice model, empower pharmacists to identify and take on an active role on the multidisciplinary team, and of course, effectively document clinical services provided. But I will also want to end by saying I am very impressed with what we are doing in the pharmacy profession. I really want to applaud every one of you in terms of where we have moved pharmacy profession in Nigeria to today. And I would say I'm very encouraged that with what we've done, I think the sky is going to be the limit for us. So we need to continue to stay strong and continue to work together and continue to manage up in whatever positions that we see. And I will end by saying that we should be the catalyst for change. Pharmacists should be the catalyst for change when it comes to what's going on with the patient. So I think with that, I will end this presentation and I will be glad to address any questions.
Thank you so much, Ma. We thank you for this wonderful presentation. We really appreciate you. SIPAN really appreciates this wonderful presentation. At this point, we are going to be welcoming comments and also questions. In order to avoid distractions, if you want to comment, please, you can just raise your hand up. There's someone is already raising his hand. We have people already raising their hands. Dr. Afonso, Plateau State SIPAN coordinator. Please, you can unmute yourself and talk. Dr. Afonso, SIPAN State, Plateau State coordinator. Unmute yourself and talk. Dr. Peter Afonso.
Yeah, good evening. Can you hear me, Dr. Timipre?
Yes, I can. You can go ahead and talk.
Okay, Dr. Teresa Pound, good evening, ma.
Good evening.
I'd like to appreciate that you were the one that trained me my preceptorship training in Jos.
That's correct. I remember you.
And you acknowledge me as one of the passionate pharmacists that can make things work around.
That's correct. I sure do. I remember you.
After the moment, including that, you were the one that trained me my special from the University of Benin, and we had great times.
That's right.
So you are doing very well. We'd like to thank you for your energy.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, you said something clearly about how to advance the profession forward.
Yeah.
You know, I'd like to remind you again that our chairman of SIPAN made inputs in the document, the consensus document you talked about.
Okay,
you
great.
know, yes, he was there. He made significant input on behalf of SIPAN.
That's good. Thank you.
You know, and he addressed issues related to what you said about clinical pharmacists, generalists, and he straightened it to the whole panel, like what I got to know.
Yeah.
Now, in locating pharmacists, you talked about integration of collaboration between the US-based pharmacists and Nigerian pharmacists that seem to be practicing related to where we are going to,
right.
Specialty. Looking at pharmacy practice in Nigeria, a lot is being, you know, advocated for hospital practice, so to speak. The community pharmacy element seem not to be well appreciated. For example, I've been in community pharmacy for a very long time. I trained preceptors. I had done preceptorship training under you. I trained pharmacy students that do community pharmacy experiences. But I don't think I know any community pharmacist that is being recognized by any institution as certified preceptors, despite the fact that some of us did those programs with you, did the rigorous training and everything. So how would you co-op the community pharmacist clinicians so that you make it what it is globally in the US, Canada, UK, and every other place? Because a lot of emphasis seem only to be, or recognition seem only to be given to people in the hospital institution.
Very good. Very
How
good.
would you address it holistically so that probably you recognize champions or people that seem to be doing a lot as individuals or have advanced the practice to some level? Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. That was a very good question. And thank you for really, for that observation. And I think in my slides, if I didn't do a good job, I need to go back and that. When I'm talking about this training, it's not just acute care setting, it's also community pharmacy practice. I believe I mentioned that. So, because if you notice, even here, there's a lot of there's a specialization in ambulatory care. And there's also specialization in community pharmacy and specialization in acute care. So it's not just acute care. It should be acute care, community pharmacy, ambulatory.
Thank you.
No, seriously. And you're right, because let's think about it. Patients in the hospital, who are the people that keep the patients out of the hospital? It's a community pharmacist. Do you follow me? If a good job is not done on the outpatient basis, meaning community pharmacy, those patients will be ending in the hospital all the time.
Sure.
So when they are real sick, they end up in acute care, they go home and the community, so the same clinical expertise that the acute care pharmacist needs is also should be applied in community. So it's not just acute care. So all what I've said, we need to look at how it should be implemented, acute care, community, and ambulatory. So thank you for that observation. And I hope I clarified that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hands are still up. Pharmacist Ogunleye Temitokpe from Apapa General Hospital. Please, can you unmute yourself and talk? Ogunleye Temitokpe. Are you there? Let's go to the next. Pharmacist Folashade Olufunke Lawa.
I'll be the one to unmute them, please. I'll be the one to unmute them to avoid the. I'm still trying to unmute Ogunleye.
Okay, please do. Okay, thank you. Sorry, please. You can talk.
Yeah,
you can talk.
I want to really commend the facilitators of this program. And I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
And I pray that this profession will be advanced to greater heights. I want to commend our director. They have been laid a very solid foundation concerning the issue of clinical practice. On a regular basis, they organize training, seminars, and workshops on how to enhance our services. And then again, most of those continuing professional development programs with PCN is a repetition of what we are being trained under the Health Service Commission of Lagos State. So I will crave your indulgence to work collaboratively with our director at HSC so that we can be a launch part of future development. Thank you, man.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Although I missed some of what you said because it wasn't clear, but I think you were making some valid points. And I hope, again, I want to say that the recommendations on way forward really needs to be what works for us in Nigeria. You understand? I also want to note that PCN and some of your regulatory bodies, like I mentioned, have done a great job and continue to do. We just need to figure out a way to go to the next level. And to me, I think the first thing is we need to really find out, define what the consultant pharmacist is in Nigeria. You know, to me, from what I've seen, that I'm understanding, is synonymous to the clinical pharmacy specialist in US. Meaning this person, this pharmacist is a specialist in maybe nephrology, in oncology, you know, internal medicine. That's the way I understand. And I stand to be corrected, I could be wrong, but that's, you know, so I think that's it. What is, if I ask, may I ask the question? Could you all tell me, can somebody from the audience tell me, a consultant pharmacist, what is their duties? What is their function? What is the minimum qualification they should have? So if you say consultant pharmacist, you're gonna be in the, let's just say a hospital. Let me just use a hospital. Will they be at the patient bedside? Or will they be involved? How do we define the clinical activities they're gonna be doing? You know, so I think those are just the questions that I want us to just keep an open mind and ask those questions. And for us to, because what we're advocating is to be recognized. In a, you know, as the medication therapy expert, as part of the multidisciplinary team, working closely with other disciplines, the physician, the nurse, to provide the care to the patient. So I think that's the one point, you know, so, but I really do feel these are just raising questions. And this is not something that can happen overnight. That's why I'm saying a task force has to be created, and you can call it whatever you want to call it, with key representatives. And I probably missed out some. You all know more than I do, but there has to be key representatives, of course, PCN, PSN, you know, the West African, you know, they need to get together, come to the table and say, okay, where do we go from here? What do we have? Do an assessment, identify the gaps, and then from the gaps, you will come up with what your action plan is. So I've given you guys ideas.
Thank you very much, Ma. I also want to mention that we at FMC Yenagua, Bayelsa State, we are always at the patient's bedside, and all our wards have pharmacists inside, residents inside.
Okay.
My HOD, Dr. Daniel Oruwense, has done a lot to try to make sure that all the wards have resident pharmacists inside, and they are always at the patient's bedside. Awesome. So far we have been doing that. We have been doing that.
Very good. So that's good. So you see, so that's an experience. So you already have an institution that is doing it. So
yes.
When you say resident, so is that what kind of training? What training did they do? A residency training program or?
Yes, they do a residency training too.
Okay, how was the residency training? Is it the one with the West African?
Yes, it's one with the West African. They go around all the different wards one by one, from the medical ward, surgical ward, mental health, orthopedic, and even the pediatrics. They go around them and they do residency. They go through, and they also do collaboration with other healthcare professionals.
Okay.
With the nursing station and also the physicians.
Okay.
They do collaboration. They do teamwork with them. So we are already doing it. That's the truth. We are already on it.
Okay. How you are showcasing what you're already doing so that it can be standardized in all of Nigeria? You see, so you have an institution that already has a multidisciplinary team. You said we have a residency. So when you're talking about certification, so is the certification that they have the one from the fellowship from the West African, or is it something?
No. There's no other certification. That's the only one we have at the from the college. That's one we have.
From the college. Okay. All Okay, thanks for sharing that. But is this
Thank you very much.
Is this standardized in all of Nigeria? No.
Well, I don't know for that. I know that UNTH2 is doing something like that. Critical care pharmacy, I know that they are doing. Dr. Maureen Wafo too, she's involved. So, and some of our students are even sent from FMC Agua to go and learn little there and then come back to us. So, apart from UNTH, I don't know of any other teaching hospital here. I don't know, but they are here. Maybe they can make their comments and tell. So we also have somebody from the community practice here right now that wants to ask a question.
Sure.
Pharmacist Folashade Olufunke Lawal.
Yes.
Victory Drugs MD.
Yes.
Yeah. So please, she has been raising up her hand. Yeah, please, can you unmute yourself and talk?
Yes.
Pharmacist Olu Lawal. Are you there, ma?
So, yeah, sorry, I'm there, and I just couldn't find the icon to almost find it now.
Okay, very good.
Thank you, Dr. Pans. That was awesome.
Oh, thank you. Good to hear your voice again.
I just want to talk a little bit more about the collaborative care. Okay. I think we have a lot of work to do there. Yeah. And I think we start with us. We need to disabuse our minds about the fact that others are not willing to work with us. They're very willing to work with us. That is the truth. Majority of them will work with us. But we have to come down from that. We have to learn probably some social skills. Excellent. And concede to one another, because that's just the way to go.
That's right.
I work in the community, and I have very good collaboration with doctors, consultants. We work together. They respect me and I respect them. Excellent. They ask me questions about medication use, and I participate actively in patient management. Very recently, I had this 82-year-old patient that suddenly said that his BP was out of control, blah, 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 and it suspected that the drug was fake. I was out of town when it happened, so I just called him. His doctor already was changing his medication and all that. Eventually, they had to add minoxidil and all of that. When I came in, I went to see him in the house, and I talked with him. Okay, bring out all your medications. I found out that he had been on that particular brand on nifedipine for 2 months, and the BP was controlled. He was also on Varsatan, he was on hydrochlorothiazide, and he was on linagliptin for diabetes. So I discovered that somebody came to massage him at home and placed him on diclofenac 200 milligrams daily. It was when he started that the BP went haywire. It took me discovering that. And the doctor was like, wow. They never thought along that line. Nobody even found out what other things could be. So we have a lot of roles to play, and we cannot work together. But we have to post ourselves, not by fighting.
That's correct.
We have to recognize that in clinical team, somebody has to lead the clinical team. That's and the consultants, the doctor has to lead the clinical team. And then we concede to that and work together in the best interest of the patient. That's the way we will be able to get over all of this. Otherwise, we just spend the rest of our time gathering together, talking, fighting, and we won't get anywhere.
That's right.
So for me, I think we need to go back to the drawing board, really. And then you talked about standardizing. Yes, we need to standardize our practice. We need to document all of these things and let people know what we are doing. That is when we can get the right place that we are pressing for. One of the days I was sharing with a professor in Luth all the interventions we were making in community, and it was like, wow. So pharmacists do all of this. He actually wanted to come into the ethics committee, but he didn't succeed before he left because of whatever he just couldn't. But he was so fascinated by all what the interventions I was telling him. So we just need to up our game. At the same time, we need to come down from our heights. We need to embrace others. We can take the leadership role by coming down. That is the only way we can lead.
That's right.
It is said that the stronger person in a relationship is the person that says sorry. And that's
Yeah.
So we can get them if we are ready to be their friends. So we cannot continue to criticize them, fight them, and expect that we will be able to move forward. It won't happen.
That's right.
I just want to keep that in.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Those are some excellent points. It goes back again to the value of that multidisciplinary team. And you made some strong points, and the points are: one, if I ask a question, when you're taking care of a patient, the care of a patient, a discipline has to be held accountable.
Yeah.
And who do you think the discipline that should be held accountable should be? Should it be the physician? Should it be the pharmacist? Should it be the nurse? Somebody has to lead. And whoever is leading is the person that is held accountable. So the person who is leading also has to recognize the value of other team members. And the other team members also have to know what they can bring to the table to provide the care to the patient. So I think that's what we're saying here, and that's what Dr. Lawal just said, and I think some of the points I'm making. The physician is leading the care of the patient. The pharmacist, we have the medication therapy knowledge, but we need to make sure we have that medication therapy knowledge. We need to make sure we can confidently bring that to the table to care for the patient. And we need to have the credentials that show that. I think in a nutshell, that's what I'm trying to say. The key still is multidisciplinary team. Now, if we have a culture that it appears there's some difference of opinion, what's wrong with the pharmacist being the catalyst to change, which is what Dr. Lawal just said. The pharmacist can be the catalyst for change. The pharmacist, and you can be a catalyst for change by getting your house in order and then managing other, I don't want to call names, but managing other disciplines up to what it needs to be. I will give you guys an example. When I started my residency years ago here, nutrition support, which is now a specialty, every day we will see patients, we will look at the labs, you will call the doctor, you will say, oh, doctor, this patient is on TPN, the potassium is 3.0, what do you want to do? In other words, it was a monitoring service. I did my residency, the institution where I did my residency, I was there for a whole year. Then I did the general, then I did the specialization one. I did not feel like after doing my PGY1 and PGY2 that I should be monitoring patients. I felt like I have the expertise to do more. So what did I do? I built a relationship with the doctors. I proved to them that I was knowledgeable and competent in what I was doing. I gradually started showing them what I can do with managing patients. I gained their trust. And before I finished, I changed the service from monitoring to management. Every patient that came into the hospital, automatically, my service was consulted. But it did not happen overnight. It wasn't the way. And then with that, it opened up doors to other clinical pharmacy management services, like vancomycin, aminoglycosides. So like what Dr. Timmy, I'm sorry if I killed your name, Timmy Priya, what you shared You guys, are you all using the interventions, the evidence? Are you all showcasing this? Are you all sharing this information with other areas, other people to show them how? Because the reason why it's working well for you guys is that you all have a very good relationship with your doctors.
Yes, we do. Yes,
So
we do.
I think that's what Nigeria has to do. Share ideas, work with them, because the goal is it should be like that all over Nigeria, not just in hospital A, in hospital B. It should be a standard. That's right. So that's the goal. That's what the goal should be. So I don't know if it's making sense what I'm saying, you know, and that's why when I was asked to do this, I could have said, this is a kind of political thing I don't want to do, but I felt like, hey, why not? This is my country. We need to talk about this. We have a lot of very smart, there's a lot that has been done in Nigeria. I think Dr. Madu.
Yeah, I see somebody from another teaching hospital. Dr. Amibo Kingsley.
Yes.
Please, can you unmute yourself and talk, Dr. Amibo Kingsley? Maybe he has an experience to share with us from his hospital.
Yeah, thank you so much. I want to begin by commending the leadership of CPAN for organizing this this meeting tonight, which is very, very timely. And I also want to commend Dr. Pounds for accepting to be part of this evening's meeting. Dr. Pounds, I want to appreciate you for your presentation. It's very inspiring, very motivational, very insightful, and very challenging. You really hit the nail on the head. You talked about you know, the American dimension to consular pharmacy practice, and also expectations from Nigerian which is why we are here this evening to learn how to practice how to maximize the circular that was given by federal government. So I appreciate you for your lecture, and there are gaps in practice of clinical pharmacy in Nigeria. I'm glad to hear that at the Federal Medical Center in Egua, they have access to rewards and some other hospitals too. But there are some other centers in Nigeria that don't have that experience. As a matter of fact, some hospitals that were previously engaged in ground rounds were stopped. There's some hospitals in Nigeria where pharmacists were engaged in ground rounds, but the management of the hospitals had to stop them from going to the rounds. And it has been a challenge with us at National Hospital and the practice. So we have been discussing with such management to see how we can get pharmacists back into the wards. And we're not quite succeeded. So, but we're hoping that with this approval by the federal government to the pharmacy council, we're hoping that very soon pharmacists will have to get back to the wards. But there are gaps, like I said, and I agree with Dr. Pounds entirely about the need to convoke a stakeholders conference. And I want to suggest that conference should hold before even pharmacists start going to the wards. The earlier that conference holds, the better for all of us. Then we need to agree to kind of develop an SOP, standard operating procedure for consultant pharmacists. There should be uniformity of practice. A consultant pharmacist in maybe Maiduguri, for instance, should have a similar standard of practice with one in Benin or in Enugu. So we need to agree on things like dress code. We need to define what the job schedule of the consultant pharmacist is. And that, like I said, that information of practice is very, very important. So we don't have discordant tunes from different pharmacy departments in different hospitals. So we need to agree on all this. And the earlier that is done, the better. We're talking about some groups that we expect to be on that conference. I agree with you entirely. PCN should be there. CPAN should be there also, WPCP. And of course, Hospital Pharmacy Association, because most of the pharmacies are actually centered around the hospital pharmacy practice. So I suggest that, like I said, that meeting should hold early enough, and we need to draw up an SOP. And the better. Thank you so much.
So thank you, Dr. Tim. Yeah. And then I think if they have an organization for community pharmacy, maybe they also need to be involved in that group.
Yeah, sure. I agree with you. Yes.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you. I would also like to acknowledge that when I did the workshop in JAWS, I was also very impressed with the multidisciplinary team collaboration that I saw there. So again, I would say institutions that already have this, and I don't know, that's it, Dr. Tapa is on the line, Maxwell, he was the one that coordinated it. It was very impressive, seeing the collaboration and that was really going on between the pharmacists and the physicians. So there are some areas that's happening. I think what we need to do is just capitalize on that. So the steps I gave in terms of definition and all that, if we all can evaluate it and see where was the next step to take.
Yeah. Okay. So can we Dr. Maxwell Dapa from the UK, please, can we hear your own experience? Please unmute yourself and talk.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Dr. Pounds.
Good evening. Good to hear from you again.
Yeah, thanks. It's been a very interesting evening. And just to make a few points, one of the things that we as pharmacists need to do in order to move this forward is to recognize that we need to drop some of those routine logistic dispensing rules that we have held so closely to our chests. Now, the person from Yenagoa made mention of what they do, good as that may be, and I'm sure you can still recall what we do in JAWS. But one thing I can tell you that pharmacists are doing that is not helping us is the fact that even when the opportunity exists, we do not utilize the opportunity of that providing that bedside services. Some of my students are online, and they should tell me if I'm wrong. We have a program in JAWS where they have free access to the wards, but most times the pharmacists are are more interested in quickly getting what they can get and leave the ward. We are not ready to properly integrate into that multidisciplinary team. And we are so engrossed in those dispensing and logistic rules that we find it difficult. We are complaining about the excess workload in the pharmacy, the paperwork. We should begin to use our technicians adequately. We should delegate a lot of these routine rules to technicians so that we can stay there in the ward. There's nothing wrong with a pharmacist staying at the bedside from morning till evening.
That's correct.
That is one thing we can do. And I think as good as PCN and other regulatory bodies are doing, they still need to do more. What do I mean by that? You go to a standard teaching hospital. I don't know what the situation is in the south, but in the north, I can easily say that FMCKP is one of the best examples where they have close to 100 pharmacists within that teaching medical center. But you go to teaching hospitals and you find that pharmacists, a teaching hospital with over 500 doctors has only 30 pharmacists. PCN should begin to initiate a program of inspecting these hospitals, teaching hospitals, specialist hospitals, general hospitals, and insist that we have the required number of pharmacists so that we can cover these routine dispensing roles as well as clinical roles. Because at the moment, you find that because of the constraint on the staff strength of pharmacists, a lot of the work is centered on that pharmacy dispensing role. So the clinical role is just in theory. A lot of it is in theory. And then, so the PCN needs to step in and step up. Meanwhile, you find that today, pharmacy graduates are roaming the street looking for jobs that will pay them 20,000, 40,000 naira a month. Meanwhile, we can use more pharmacists in the hospitals. So we need PCN, PSN, NAFDAC, whoever is involved to step up, inspect the teaching hospital, inspect the specialist hospitals, inspect the general hospitals, and shut them down if they do not have the required number of pharmacists that can cover the dispensing and the clinical roles. And lastly, I'm sorry to say this, with due respect to everybody, but the best we have at the moment in Nigeria in terms of practice is the generalist clinical pharmacy. We do not have specialists yet. So while for us, what we call consultant is a fellows of the West African College. Good as that is, we still need more than just acquiring that fellowship. We, like you said, we need to acquire the specialty, the specialist skills in those areas so that we can become true consultants.
Right.
So what we have presently are just generalist clinical pharmacists, but we need to take it a step further. So the task force you suggested is good. We should begin to look at things like that, look at how we can step it up from where we are now to where we need to be. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Excellent points. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Very good point.
Yeah, want to take a comment from pharmacist Titi Layo Onedo. Oh, the CPAN national chairman wants to talk, but after we take this one, maybe he can talk. Sorry, sir, you said you've been raising your hand, but we are not seeing you.
Thank you. So who is to speak then?
Titi Layo Onedo. Pharmacist Titi Layo, please can you speak? When you are done, the chairman can talk. Unmute yourself and talk. Pharmacist Titi Layo.
Good evening, colleagues. Good evening, colleagues.
Good evening.
Can you hear me, please? Okay.
Yes, so, we can hear you. You can go ahead.
So I want to join others in congratulating the organizers of this program and our presenter, my preceptor, Dr. Teresa Pams, for this beautiful and timely presentation.
Thank you.
I actually want to agree with you that from one of your quotes that our practice, pharmacy practice, is actually evolving, most especially in Lagos State, because I am the chairman of the Association of Hospital and Administrative Pharmacists of Nigeria, Lagos State branch. And I know what we are doing in some of our centers, even though I would not want to agree that we are doing so well in all our centers, but I don't think we are doing badly. For instance, I want to speak for some centers in Lagos State. My own hospital, National Orthopedic Hospital, Igbobi, we are doing so well. We are doing so much in terms of pharmaceutical care. In fact, it's the standard of practice in my own hospital.
Oh, great.
And we are at the bedside of the patient also. We are trying to pursue specialization. In fact, some of us have are specialists in anticoagulation. We have some people people who are specialists in pediatrics,
Okay.
and so on and so forth, drug information services. And I know, and we do rounds. We go on rounds. We have the pharmacist rounds, whereby we do the teaching and the working rounds, and we have the multidisciplinary ward rounds. We have gone to that level in my own institution, whereby if the physician, if the pharmacist is not on the round cannot start. We'll be asking, where are the pharmacists in my team? And you know, it's even what the kind of report that the HOD, Dr. Margaret Obono, would not want to hear of. So every one of us, we strive to make our rounds as and when due. Yeah. And apart from that, we are involved in the medicine and therapeutic committees. We are in so many committees whereby we drive the policies in the hospitals. And even though I would not say that everything is, how do I put it, that we have reached there 100%. But if I am to rank my own institution in terms of the pharmaceutical care services that we render to our patients, I will want to rank my institution maybe a 70%.
That's good.
And I want to also talk for some other hospitals in Lagos State, like Lastwood. They are doing wonderfully well. Okay. And there we have a pharmacist who is a specialist in renal care. We have a specialist in respiratory, and so on and so forth. They are doing wonderfully well too. And even psychiatric hospital, Yaba, they have also embraced this bedside patient care of a thing. And it can only get better. It can only get better. And like the guy that spoke, the guy from Jos that spoke, that is like we bother ourselves with so much activities like dispensing, things that we should leave for the technicians. I want to agree with him. It's a problem because things that really the pharmacists should not bother their heads with, you see them leaving their core clinical roles to be doing the traditional role, as it were. Oh, let this be complete. I'm not saying accountability is something that we should relegate to the background, but I think we should concentrate more on the clinical roles. And this is the time, most especially now that we have been recognized, we need to do more. Because this recognition comes more responsibilities for us, because we cannot afford to fail ourselves. You cannot call yourself a consultant and yet you do not have anything. You do not have anything to offer. So I want to appeal to every one of us in this meeting this night that this circular that just came out is a challenge, sort of. We should seek more knowledge wherever we can. And I am so glad to know that you mentioned that you have been called into the board of the ASHP to give some kind of what is it called now, maybe certification to international students. I think it's something that is the welcome development, and I'm sure by the time you start, most of us will want to key into this. I think I would want to stop here for now. Thank you so much for the opportunity given to me.
Excellent thoughts. Thank you for sharing that. That's good. I think what I want to appreciate is the transparency from everybody who is on this call. I really, that shows that we're definitely moving, we're going to move in the right direction. The transparency, sharing some of the points, the good things that are happening, and also sharing some of the opportunities that we have. I think that having that open mind, at least from what I'm hearing from the people who have talked today, that's very, very encouraging, very encouraging. So I really just wanted to make that, observation. Great point. Thank you, guys. And that makes me feel good that I was able to, I felt comfortable to share with you guys my observation. Because like I said, we're in this together. It's a team effort. We are all pharmacists, and we want to move the profession in the right direction. So again, I want to appreciate that.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Then the chairman can go ahead. Dr. Timmy.
Good evening.
Dr. Timmy, please.
Can you hear me, please?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. Dr. Bello, good evening.
Good evening, yes, we can hear you.
Yes. Dr. Pound.
Thank
Good
you.
Evening.
Good evening.
You have done more than wonderfully well. I'm so happy. I want to recognize the Deputy President of the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria, Ejirofo Ibu, that she's with us here. Okay. I also saw Dr. Tony Doko of PCN. I don't know if they are representing the PSN President and the PCN Registrar respectively, because I invited the duo to this meeting. But since we have the Dr. Foyibo with us and Tony Ndoko, I don't know if Tony Ndoko is still with us now. I can get that,
he has his hands up.
Hello?
He has his hands up.
All right. So I'm happy that being this night is getting to the appropriate quarters. When you were delivering your lecture, you spoke on many things, but then I would like to bring in aspects of hands-on clinical skills. You emphasized so much on that. Hands-on clinical skills.
Yes.
The first meeting that we had in Kaduna,
yes.
I was telling the pharmacists there that when we are in CPAN, we ask people to submit their information. And you will see a pharmacist with B-Pharm, clinical pharmacy, PhD, fellowship in clinical pharmacy. They have so many degrees. In fact, some have up to 6 clinical pharmacy.
Yeah.
Ask them, what do you do with these degrees? You just put them inside your box and lock it up. That is a waste of knowledge, a waste of human resources. Most of the universities in this country are funded by taxpayers' money. And then pharmacists are trained and they don't put what they learn into practice. I see pharmacists saying that some were chased out of the wards and some wanted to go into the wards. I ask them sometimes, what do you do in the wards? When you go into the wards, what will you be doing? And that brings into question the standardization that we are talking about. Dr. Timothy talked about Yenegua. I'm just hearing it for the first time, so I congratulate them. I believe, I agree they are doing well. They are not the only ones. Somebody just talked about Lagos too. I have seen people from, I think, Cross River states that are also doing a lot of this bedside clinical and the rest. So, you know, we are trying to bring all these people together and also replicate what is happening in some centers in other places. I thank Dr. Amibo being the chairman of AHAPUN, and he's like a brother to me. He's really working with us. But then, pharmacy has been improved in Nigeria. Sorry, I hope you can hear me.
Yeah.
Yes. The consultancy pharmacy cadre has been approved in Nigeria, and immediately it was approved. We had our physician colleagues, NMA in particular, they said they reject it in totality and is an assault on their professional medical practice. Why I'm saying this is because some of our colleagues say we don't need to keep fighting. I don't think that pharmacists are the cause of fights. I know that pharmacists don't go and insult physicians or this and that. In fact, we give them a lot of, and because they have a noble profession, we shall continue. We also know that, yes, they are the head of the clinical team, not really the healthcare team, but the clinical team. They are the heads. So that will be, and Japan has gone ahead to create coalition for health, better healthcare in Nigeria. Awesome. We have a group like that now. Sorry, I will run up. I won't want to take much of your time, but we have gone ahead to create that group, coalition for better healthcare in Nigeria, and we have so many physicians there. To thank all the members that are there, that are helping to have physicians, lab scientists. That group is doing well. I believe that is the way that we are going to move forward in this country. That's but then, on the area of knowing what to present, because it's the clinical knowledge that we radiate, the thing we have to give, that we make people to respect us. Otherwise, we will make a joke of this consultant pharmacy cadre in this country. I belong to one group, COVID-19 think tank group. I belong to that group made up of so many professors of medicine and other healthcare professionals. And when they have this consultant cadre, we wrote something and we posted it there. Some physicians were saying that in America, these things are working. But in Nigeria, people just want a title. They just want a title to collect money, national cake. This shows that they feel that we don't have what it takes. They feel that we don't have that knowledge to give or those things to use on our patients. But through our activities in SIPAN, I have seen that there are lots of highly knowledgeable pharmacists. In fact, when they were doing all these weekly clinical presentations, I saw a lot of things. I said, wow, so we have pharmacists like this in this country. But the issue now is, how do we harness them? And how do we send them to the front to showcase what we can do for Nigeria through what we're doing for our patients? So I want to thank you today on what you have done for us. And I also want to say that this, whatever we are going to achieve, like many persons have said, we'll have to start in-house. We will build our clinical skills, exposition. We need to build on that. Then we need a lot of our colleagues to also cooperate with us. I hope Dr. Foyibo is hearing me, and I believe she will convey my message to the PSM president, and probably Dr. Tony Doko is also hearing me. In some hospitals, we get a lot of reports. You see somebody with FAMD, and he's sent into a store to be carrying cards. Is that how we are going to move forward in this country? So we really need to start in-house, encourage ourselves, and move ahead so that they say charity begins at home. We start getting better from the home, and we move outside. And that is why we are saying the way forward, the impact, the way forward. The consultants pharmacist cadre has been approved. But what is the way forward? The way forward means that we must make it work. And probably those who were against it in the beginning, we say, no, wow, this is great. Let them come. And then we shall spread, because we are not going to the government to approve it again for us. It has been approved. But now the way forward is that we must. It's like having a certificate. If you get a certificate, you must defend it. I believe that is a bit or a little summary of what I want to say. I will still want to appreciate you, Ma. I saw a lot of your students, everybody saying you are their students and they are. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. I have, I think that like Tony Doko, Dr. Doko is on, and Kunle Tometi and Prof. Some people have their hands up. I think think the okay.
Professor, let's allow Professor Azuka Opara, please, can you unmute yourself and talk?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. And let me thank everybody for finding time to participate. Dr. Palms,
Yes.
You've done a great job again. I think that has become your trademark. So, I'm not surprised.
Thank you.
Let me just appeal to my colleagues here. Let us just be patient with ourselves. You see, Nigerian healthcare delivery system is not developed. Many of the problems we're having are problems of underdevelopment. The people are not developed. The systems are not developed. The country is not developed. All these things with time. America, that is history, they didn't start overnight. They didn't get to where they are today. Now, let me tell you something. The basis why we have been fighting for recognition of the consultant cadre over the years at the West African Postgraduate College is to have a legal framework for pharmacy profession to advance. Without that document, you will still remain where we are, year in, year out. This opportunity, which formally the government has recognized us, that we can mature fully to that standard where pharmacists can be regarded as consultants, you know. So that legal framework has not been established. The next thing now is for us to work towards perfecting it, you know, making it, realizing it. But if you didn't have that document, we'll keep oscillating back and forth. So it's good that all these conversations are going on. They will eventually lead us to a standardized practice. That there's no doubt that we have pockets of good practices here and there. But what we are saying is that it needs to be standard, it needs to be uniform, okay? And you don't just want to have one good Teresa Pounds or one good Amibo or one good Joseph Mado.
Yeah.
No, we want a critical mass.
That's why.
It is only when we have a critical mass that it can reflect, it can become the character of pharmacy profession. And it takes time to build a critical mass. But the good thing is that it started. It has started, and I believe that given some time, with the kind of enthusiasm I see in our colleagues, we'll be able to even do better than many of us are expecting. So let's just be patient with ourselves. Let us cooperate with ourselves, and let us criticize less of ourselves. I can tell you, you talk so much about medical profession. It's poorly developed in Nigeria. Those of us into research know that what is happening, our teaching hospitals are not really better than primary healthcare centers. These are the realities. So don't just think that it is pharmacists. Pharmacists are not doing well. Okay? It's a general problem. The knowledge is there. But once you have the opportunity, you can begin to improve. We know there's a gap between the education and practice. And this gap will be bridged with time. We have started the journey. The conversation has started. I think with time, it will get better. So thank you for this gathering. And I believe we'll continue to have discussions like this until, you know, we get to where we want to be. Thank you. Yeah.
Excellent. Good. Thank you, Prof. Yeah, and thank you for all your support. You know, I think we're fortunate to have somebody like you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Hello, thank you, Prof. Thank
We
you,
have,
Prof. We have a lot of people still trying to say something, but time is fast spent. I don't know if they can send their questions in and it will be answered on the page. Time is fast spent.
We have 3 people. We have a representative from NAPSA and Dr. Idoko. Could we at least have them speak?
All right, let's have the Tony Idoko speak.
And Kunle Tomedi, he's representing NAPSA.
Okay, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak. I just want to say that it has been a wonderful evening, and I want to appreciate Pounds for the good presentation. Of course, I'm not surprised because I've interacted with you. You've done so much for us in this country, and we are still doing more.
Thank you.
Well, we pray that God will continue to strengthen you.
Amen.
In line with what Professor Para said, I think what we really need at this point is to encourage ourselves and know that we, despite all the up and down and all that has been going on, we are doing our bit. And by God's grace, gradually we shall get to where we are looking at. The truth about our practice here, the fact that the wide gap between the education and practice, and we all recognize that. It's also good that we're having pockets of, people in different places doing their bit. But like we all know, it's about the critical mass of people that are needed to make this difference that we're looking at. But again, I want to encourage us, for those of us in the hospital setting mainly, that have had opportunity of having clinical training, be it PharmD, West African Postgraduate College, and the rest. Please let us, as much as possible, put our knowledge into practice. It's very, very important. A situation whereby after you are PharmD or after you are WHCP, you still go back and you do the traditional thing of probably dispensing drugs or working in the store. It doesn't bring out the knowledge in you. And it's what you do that makes the difference wherever you find yourself. The other professionals can only appreciate us if we are doing something different that they cannot do, or they know that it is specific to us, it's unique to us. This is what brings in the difference that we're all looking for. So I just want to encourage us. Let's not be discouraged by anything, but let's keep applying the knowledge we have wherever we find ourselves to make that difference, to bring in that uniqueness and those things that stand us out. Thank you very much. Let me stop here.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
I think we have to round up now. Time is fast spent, and some people are already saying it's quite late where they are staying. The questions can be sent in later, and the answers also can be sent in later. We want to get your slide, Ma. We hope you're going to get your slide.
Yes, yes.
I
think I have my student sending this. We put it in the group chat.
Okay, beautiful. Yes. Then I will. All right. Then I will send it. I will send it through all the WhatsApp group. Thank you very much, Ma. We really appreciate this wonderful presentation. Thank you, Ma. Can one of your students give us, a closing prayer? You have 2 of your students there. Can one of them give us a brief closing prayer? Thank you.
Is it okay
if we can have one of our NAPSA members who is on, Dr. Kunle Tomedi. He can quickly recognize himself and give us a closing prayer.
Okay, that would be lovely. Yeah, okay, that's okay.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you very much, Ma. And I want to thank you for your presentation. Even myself that practice here, there's a lot I learned from that. 3 things. First is the stakeholders meeting. All the standardization and all the plans we have for developing clinical pharmacy practice in Nigeria must be brought to that stakeholders meeting and discussed at the table, and the plan to move forward must be designed over there, put down in writing, and everybody understands the matching orders so that we don't have people operating from different points of view. The second thing is collaborative practice. It is very important. I practice in the retail world, and I have a lot of collaboration with a lot of physicians. that brings to bear my clinical practice experience. So what I'm trying to say there is a lot of clinical practice opportunity in every area of practice of pharmacy, maybe hospital, maybe retail. You might actually be in the supply chain. And once you make yourself valuable to wherever you work, you can best project the advantage that you bring to that organization by your clinical experience and training. And the third thing is NAPSA, congratulate you guys for all you're doing. And we commit to being part of the stakeholders meeting whenever we're ready to do it. And I thank you very much. Let us pray. Father, we thank you for this evening. We thank you for this course we had this evening. We thank you for the knowledge that you have, Dr. Pounds, impacting all of us. We pray as we leave this evening that we'll not just be hearers of that alone, but we'll be able to take what we've heard and take it into practice. And that at the end of the day, would improve the quality of life of our patients and also the quality of life of we, the practitioners, our work, or even at home. And we pray, my Heavenly Father, that Nigeria will be blessed for this increased knowledge that we all gather. Thank you, my Heavenly Father. In the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, we prayed. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Pounds.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you for having me. All right.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
God bless you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Teresa. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Very much, ma'am.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Good night.
Thank you
Thank you
very
to
much.
organizers.
Thank you, Dr. Ibrahim Bello. We appreciate you. Thank you so much for the technical part. Thank you. Good night.